Good day, students and learners. Welcome to Eko Learners Support for WAEC and NECO candidates. I'll be taking you through a topic in economics. The topic is consumer equilibrium. In this topic, we would set our objectives to include that students will learn to explain the concept itself, that's the concept of consumer equilibrium, and two, we'll learn to determine consumer equilibrium. Determine consumer equilibrium using both the cardinal and ordinal approaches. What is consumer equilibrium? As this diagram indicates, we are moving from unhappy to okay, and then finally to satisfaction. So consumer equilibrium refers to a situation of maximum satisfaction, basically. A situation of maximum satisfaction from the consumption of different amounts of commodities at the disposal of the consumer. So, where a consumer has consumed a number of commodities, limited, of course, as we had said in previous sessions, by income and prices of the commodities, and this consumer is not willing to change his pattern of consumption it means he has arrived at the maximization of the utility is deriving from that commodity, or is at highest satisfaction. Now, determination of consumer equilibrium, the cardinal approach. The cardinal school of thought state that utility is measurable in concrete terms, that you can assign concrete numbers to utility. So you can have utility 1, utility 2, utility 3 measured in a unit called utils. So the cardinal approach says that you can measure it like any other physical commodity, and that the unit of measurement is called utils, and this is referred to as the quantitative measurement of consumer satisfaction. The ordinal approach, on the other hand, say that you cannot measure utility like other physical products. That what you can do is to rank utility in comparative terms. In other words, you can say I derived more utility from consuming this basket or bundle of commodities compared to when I consumed that bundle or basket of commodities. The ordinal approach is therefore referred to as the qualitative method of determination of consumer satisfaction. Now let's look at the cardinal approach. First, its assumptions. The first is that it can be measured. It's an assumption. Okay? Now note that utility itself is a psychological feeling. It is not a physical product. So this assumption was made for the purposes of analysis, Because in real life, you cannot see utility like a physical product or commodity, and therefore it is difficult to measure. The second assumption is that we believe all consumers are rational, meaning all consumers are right thinking and would therefore behave to type. This means that a consumer will buy more of a product where the price is favorable to him or her, or where the satisfaction derived continues to increase. The third is that the law of diminishing marginal utility holds. And what does this law state? It states that the total utility you will derive from the consumption of more and more of a commodity will increase at a diminishing rate as you consume more and more of that commodity. So, cardinal utility approach based the analysis of utility maximization or consumer equilibrium on the fact that the law of diminishing marginal utility holds, and that the marginal utility of money is constant, meaning it doesn't change. Because if the marginal utility of money changes, then you cannot begin to talk about the law of diminishing marginal utility in the first place. This means that satisfaction derived from extra use of income does not change irrespective of the consumer's income. Okay? Utility is additive. We saw this also in the previous session, meaning you can add units of utility the way you add units of physical products. So you can have utility 1, utility 2, utility 3, and then have total utility as utility 1 plus 2 plus 3, as seen here. And then utility maximization under the cardinal approach. In other words, note that we said utility maximization is the same thing as achieving consumer equilibrium. When the consumer is at equilibrium, it means that the consumer has achieved maximum utility or highest or maximum satisfaction. Under the cardinal approach, we look at the necessary and sufficient conditions, which are also referred to as the first and second order conditions, respectively. Utility is maximized subject to the number of quantity or number of units of a product that is consumed for the necessary condition. And previously, we also saw that for the ease of analysis, we make use of two commodities in economics. So the number of commodities is limited to 2. Therefore, for one commodity, utility is maximized under the cardinal approach when the marginal utility derived from the consumption of one extra unit of that commodity is equal to the price of that commodity, and that for two commodities, utility is maximized where the marginal utility derived from consuming one extra commodity unit of that commodity divided by the price of the commodity is equal to the marginal utility derived from consuming the second commodity divided by the price of the second commodity. In other words, in a two commodity scenario, utility is maximized or the consumer achieves equilibrium when the ratio of marginal utility to price of commodity X, for example, is equal to the ratio of marginal utility to price of commodity Y. For the sufficient condition, we have to bring in another or a third variable, which is the income. And this is what usually is referred to as the income constraint. So, for the condition to be sufficient, necessary means this condition must be in place. Sufficient means this condition must be fulfilled. So for the two conditions that should be or must be in place for utility maximization or for consumer equilibrium in a single case scenario, again, is that the price of the commodity must be equal to its marginal utility. And for a two commodity case, the ratio of the price of the marginal utility to the price of one commodity should be equal to the ratio of the marginal utility to the price of the second commodity. And then for the sufficient condition where you introduce the income, because at the end of the day, whatever is to be consumed by a consumer is limited by the resources at the disposal of that consumer. So consumption cannot be limitless, even where there is the law of diminishing marginal utility, even where satisfaction falls as you increase consumption. But consumption cannot be infinite. It is limited by a factor, in this case, income. So, when income is introduced into these equations, what you have is that the price multiplied by the quantity of the product in a single case, in a single commodity case, is equal to the income. And let's pause a bit and understand that. For you to achieve the highest satisfaction for a commodity, given your income, it means you spend the entirety of your income on that commodity. Expending your entire expenditure means that the price of the commodity, at which the commodity is at the market, multiplied by the quantity that you can buy, is equal to your income. And in a single, for a two commodity case, the product of price and commodity, that is the price and the commodity of product A or commodity A, in this case commodity X, plus the price and quantity, the product of the price and quantity of commodity Y is equal to the income. So it means that this is a bundle. It means this is a bundle. It means this is a bundle of products. This is another bundle of products. So the bundle of this product plus the bundle of that product is equal to your income. So I maximize my utility when I've expended the totality of my income on purchasing the different bundles of products available to me. And this is self-explanatory. This is just a note to say that Px is the price of commodity X, Py is the price of commodity Y, Qx is the quantity of X, Qy is the quantity of Y, and M is the income of the consumer. So we can say, in a case where income, let's say income income, for instance, is 500. And price of X, for instance, say is 20. Quantity of X is 10. Price of Y is 15. You can have a question that says, at what quantity of Y will this consumer, where you have this case, what quantity of product Y will this consumer buy for him to be at equilibrium? So you simply go back to this relationship, the sufficient condition for utility maximization or for consumer equilibrium for a two commodity, because you have two commodities here, and you say that the price of X multiplied by the quantity of X plus the price of Y multiplied by the quantity of Y is equal to the income. This can, some texts indicate income as I. Okay? So, price of X here, therefore, is 20 multiplied by the quantity of X, which is 10, plus the price of Y, the price of Y, the price of Y, which is 15, price of Y is 15, multiplied by the quantity of Y, which is what we don't know, to give us 500. So it's a simple equation. 20 multiplied by 10 will give us 200, plus 15 multiplied by QY 500. So if we rearrange this, we would have 15 QY equals 500 minus 200. QY, therefore, will be 300 divided by 15, and that will give us 20. So for this consumer to be at equilibrium, it means, or for him to maximize utility given his income, he would have to consume 20 units of product Y to be at equilibrium. If it's also the case of a single commodity, the question could be, okay, the question could be, price of the commodity PX, for example, is 10, and the income is 200 is income. What is the quantity that this consumer has to buy for him to be at equilibrium? So we go back to the function or the equation and say price of X which is 10, price of X which is 10 multiplied by the quantity of X is equal to the income. And therefore, if we divided both sides by 10, we would have our quantity to be equal to 20 as well. So these are simple, straightforward equations that can be easily resolved. But it will be simple if we understand the principle that is behind the cardinal utility approach for determining consumer equilibrium. Now, we'll go to the ordinal utility approach, which is also referred to as the indifference curve approach, where utility cannot be measured, but rather can be ranked in order of preference. Okay? So, in this session, we'll look at the assumptions, and then we'll talk about the analysis at another session. So, the first assumption is that, of course, utility cannot be measured in concrete terms. Consumers can only rank their commodities in order of preference. More utility is always better than less. It's the assumption that you want to get more utility than less utility. Okay, you want to get more satisfaction than less satisfaction, right? Meaning rationality. Consumers are rational. Consumer will consume commodities that give them maximum satisfaction. Utility is not additive, unlike in the cardinal case where you can add utility 1 plus utility 2 and so on. Utility here is not additive but comparative. So what you can say is this utility is better than that utility. I get better utility from this than that compared to that one.
Acing your WAEC and NECO examinations has been made easy by the Lagos State Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education with the Eko Learners Support for WAEC and NECO Candidates television program. Join seasoned teachers as they take you through these core subjects. targeting the exact syllabus of WAEC and NECO. Watch Eko Learners Support for WAEC and NECO candidates through these social media platforms to access more educational content and give their feedback. Eko Learners Support for WAEC and NECO candidates. Pass your examinations with flying colors.
And so, we have rounded up this session where we have talked about consumer equilibrium, meaning maximization of utility or attainment of highest satisfaction. We have looked at a single case scenario using the Cardinal approach where utility can be maximized only when marginal utility is equal to price under the necessary condition, and where the product of the price and quantity must be equal to the income under the sufficient condition. And we have looked at a two-case scenario, or two commodity scenario, where for the necessary condition, the ratio of marginal utility of product A must be equal to the ratio of marginal utility to price of product B. And for the sufficient condition, the product of the price of commodity A and the quantity of commodity A plus the product of price of commodity B and the quantity of commodity B is equal to the income. Thank you for listening. And if you have any suggestions, observations, or feedback, you can reach us on our social media handles that will be displayed on the screen. Thank you.